At the center of the universe, at the border between the light and the dark, stands Castle Grayskull. For countless ages, the heroes of Grayskull have defended the universe against the forces of evil. Walk through the Hall of Living Pictures and learn the history and mystery of the masters of the universe. Dive deep into the mythology of Eternia, Etheria, and more. For those who know the stories of Grayskull will come the power. The power to be supreme. The power to be all-knowing. The power to be Legends of Grayskull.
Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 7.5 of Legends of Grayskull, the fan podcast where we discuss the history, the mystery, the magic, and mythology of He-Man, She-ra, Eternia, Etheria, Primus, Norder, Golden Books, Ladybird Books, UK Annuals, comics, mini-comics, anything you can imagine with the Masters of the Universe, Princess of Power, He-Man logo on it. I'm Matthew Duch. I'm here with Sean Scavarna. Sean, how are we doing today?
I think in a former life you were a carnival barker.
It's quite possible.
Every time we do well, I shouldn't say we, because I never do the intro because I don't have the guts to do it. But every time we do this, you always have that carnival barker thing, and I'm like, man, you take it. You run with that and grab that beautiful butterfly fella, because, man.
Yeah, it's funny, actually. We, at work, once a year, we have our anniversary sale week, you know. And we give away prizes and everything. And for those who don't know, I work in a grocery store. So we put like numbers on each of the shopping carts. And then like on the hour, we'll call out a number. And if your number's on the shopping cart, you get to come up and spin our prize wheel. And like we give away gift cards and product and everything. You know, it's really fun. But like nobody wanted to do it. Like there a couple, like my manager did it and like a couple other people like did it and they're just like, I don't want to do it. So like I just got it thrust upon me one time. and so I get on the intercom and I'm doing this whole spiel and everything. And thank you for shopping. And we're going to do this. We're going to do that. And they're like, so now that was like 4 years ago. And now I'm like the only one who does it. Like, they're like, if you're here, you're doing it, because they said the same thing. They're like, you get on there and you sound like a game show host, and I'm like,
it works. I mean, that's the thing. Like every time we record, I'm just there, like, man, I just be like, we cover things. Please subscribe, like us. Okay, let's move on. That would be me, because I like we've had the joke before. I'm horrible at self promotion, so you can imagine me just going, hi. I'm here. We're gonna talk, and then we go bye. That's pretty much that's me. But anyway, so let's see. News wise,
we got some big news.
We got some fun news over the weekend. Yeah.
Let me switch over. I think it's this one. I hope it is. Oh, look at that! I feel professional.
Look at you.
I knows how to do things.
Yes. I can has picture.
So this is part of the graphic for. So tell us about what this is for, Sean. I hit something right quick.
This is, if I'm looking at it correctly, that's Axel Jimenez's promotional artwork for the Powercon this year, and we have
Powercon, Sean?
Powercon is the giant He-Man convention out in California that happens each year. Last year was a huge year.
Sean?
We don't need to do that, do we? That's where Mickey Mouse lives.
A He-Man? What's a He-Man, Sean?
What's a He-Man? Oh man, it's like, well, what are we gonna do today, Mr. Peabody?
I was thinking more the infomercial. God, why is this orange juice so fangled hard to open?
It's exactly. Like, I can have milk now, like they did on Friends that time. So anyway, PowerCon is August this year. I don't remember the dates exactly, but it's this August
8th and 9th.
8th and 9th. Okay, so it's August 8th and 9th out in California, and This year, they're going to be celebrating She-Ra's anniversary. And right here, for those of you who aren't watching on YouTube, Matt pulled up the promotional image of He-Man with his battle axe.
Very origin style. Yep.
Very origin style, very mini comic style too. And a 1980s toy version of She-Ra piece of artwork to represent the big news that hit over the weekend, which was the Powercon exclusives that were announced.
So the first one we got is She-Ra. Always in your head. So they did an origin style She-Ra here. So very, very vintage toy looking, as we've seen most of the origins so far are. Yeah, I mean they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it. For those who have always wanted and I told Sean this too. This is surprising. This is the one version of She-Ra that I'm really surprised that we didn't get in classics. And I know there are a lot of people out there who want the vintage toy She-Ra. But at least they're doing it in Origins. It's very faithful to the original. It's got the soft goods skirt. It looks like it's going to have the rooted hair. It's a perfect update for the vintage toy. That being said, it really doesn't do much for me, honestly. I don't care for the power sword. It's basically and honestly, I don't care for the Origins power sword either. Sean knows when it comes to power swords. For me, it's pretty much Filmation or nothing. But yeah, so it's basically the Origins power sword in gold with a gem in there. And I don't know why, but for some reason that Alcala kind of a power sword just always looks so weird with a gem in it. I've seen a few over the years, customs and that, and it always looks odd to me.
I'm one of those people, like the Alcala stuff for me is always going to be my happy spot, and I love that we got it in classics, and I like that they're carrying it into Origins in this case. And for me, I guess, as just looking at it as, okay, if He-Man's sword is going to be that version, them doing this for She-Ra's sword, it makes sense. Absolutely. And it's kind of fun to see it that way. And I also do like that they went with the traditional gold, which was what the figure had in the 80s, to separate it from He-Man's silver or gray, in that way. I think that's pretty fun. I miss this design. Like I only had She-Ra and Bo when I was a kid to join in with the Masters guys and all that, and it's fun to see this design come back a little bit. I won't lie. And the one thing about this that I think is really cool compared to when we were kids is at least this is going to be in the style of Origins, so it's not like here's all these Masters characters and then here's this offshoot line that has more like 4 or 5 inch Barbie looking figures in a sense. Right. This one, I think it's nice that they're unifying it, and I gotta say, the face sculpt that they did and the painting and everything looks like they basically went back to the 80s.
Oh, almost. Absolutely.
It's a very, very beautiful looking face on this She-Ra.
No, it absolutely is, and I don't mean to knock anybody that is excited for it. It's a perfect recreation. I had She-Ra and Glimmer and Queen Angela as a kid, and this is that figure that I played with. That's just my personal preference. It doesn't do much for me personally as a collector, but I've said before the Origins line as a whole doesn't really do much for me.
Yeah, I'm more and more in that camp the more I'm seeing of it. I'm not gonna lie about that.
Yeah, there's just like we said, it's the Origins line is just basically a rehash of the vintage toys, which this is perfect. I like that they use the glitter stickers and everything. It's really well done. It's a really well done figure. I'm glad that people who have wanted this version of She-Ra are finally getting one. And I've got to imagine that this means that we'll see her in the Origins line, and I'm guessing probably rooted hair, or not rooted hair, plastic hair for the mass release.
Like classics, probably, yeah.
And maybe I don't know. Maybe the soft goods will go to plastic too, because that sure looks like a soft goods cape. But even Scareglow, that we all thought was going to be a fabric cape, that actually turns out that it is a plastic cape on there.
Yeah.
They just did like this texture that looks really cool and makes it look like a fabric cape. So.
Well, they did the soft goods with the Prince Adam last year for San Diego Comic-Con in the exclusive. And it wouldn't surprise me if the dress is soft goods, but maybe to save money, maybe the cape is going to be like a plastic or a rubber of some sort. But I don't know. I just dig it because there is that element of it reminds me of my childhood to see her like this again and all that kind of stuff. But the one of the biggest things that I can't overlook about this line will always be the knee flaps, and they're still visible there no matter what they did, and that's a huge thing that drives me nuts about this line. It's like, if you're gonna do it, you didn't need to go there. Sorry, Mattel. It's like that's half the reason this already is like for me at times. It's like that whole look just feels like, why do we have mud flaps on the knees? I never understood it. So
and the fact that they're still showing up here, you know, we're holding out hope. The Horsemen had said that they wanted to tweak some things, but I mean, we've seen that first wave or two waves revealed. We've seen the exclusives here. I think those things are pretty much here to stay.
Yeah, and that's not like I wish we could have had a fan poll, because man, I would have voted I would have gone on and voted like 3 or 4 times an hour.
The fan polls. Oh, I forgot about those.
Not on the org, on Mattel or something. Like, go on Mattel.com and be like, stop doing this to these figures.
Yeah,
it's making them look ridiculous.
They did that. They did some on Matty Collector back in the day. And He-Man.org did some for Mattel. Like, they asked them to do it. And there were always those people that were on the losing side. They were always like, oh yeah, people went in and voted like 5 times and masked their IPs and all this and that. And that's good memories. So there's our She-ra, and then the other big reveal was the Lords of Power 5-pack. So for those of you who don't know, Lords of Power was one of the early working titles for Masters of the Universe, and there was some test footage that Mattel had taken that I think it was when they were testing them with kids. An early test, they did some footage of them, and that surfaced in recent years. And there was a nice group shot at the end of it of all of these 5. Merman, Beastman, He-Man, Skeletor, and Man-at-Arms. But they were the original prototypes. Even earlier than some of the other prototypes that have come out over the years. These were like the earliest. So that's a 5-pack that they're releasing at Powercon, and man, they are dead on. If you put this, and I should have found that picture to put here too. If you look at this compared to those early prototypes, they nailed it. Like,
yeah.
And this right here is what I thought Origins was going to be, because after seeing that He-Man Adam exclusive that was very Alcala, it was very early mini comics. I thought that they were going to take a little. You know, they were a little something different. He-Man had the boot knife that's never been done before. Adam was in that early mini comic with the blue vest, you know. And same thing here. You got Merman with like the little dangly bits on his boots and off of his belt. You know, you got Beastman with that unique armor. Skeletor has a very unique head sculpt. Man-at-Arms. This Man-at-Arms looks so much better than the one we're getting in the mass release line to me. You got the fur there. The helmet looks a lot better. You know, this is what I thought we were getting when this Origins line was announced, and that's part of why when the actual mass release line was shown, I was like, because it was just a vintage toy with added articulation. That's what we're getting at mass retail. Yeah, and I was expecting at least something like this, where at least this is something we haven't had before.
Yeah, and that's the appeal to me. It's, you know, each iteration of the line has done something different each time around. Whether you like it or not, it's doing something different. And a huge reason why I'm not a fan of what Origins is doing is just adding articulation to something I already have on my shelf doesn't make me necessarily want to run out and go buy it again. Like that to me is that's almost the whole, the definition of insanity. Keep doing the same thing over and over and see if you get a different result. The result this time will be I'm probably not going to be buying them as much. I'll get a few here and there that are my favorites, but I'm not going to dig deep into this like I did with classics at all. I can already tell that. But like you said, when I see this, it's like, well, this is at least a different iteration of it. This is something where I'm getting a merman that I've never gotten before because of all the different details on him. The Beast Man looks a whole different way. Yeah. And here's the one that bugs me the most is every time I see Skeletor in the mass market version, I hate him. I hate the open mouth. I don't like the...
Is it the boots? The boots drive me nuts.
The boots drive me nuts. The fact that they have that little line there, but for some reason they go purple the whole way up, and it's like that whole swivel joint then is purple. And it's like if you see a singled out version of this, you actually see it's the half boot.
Yeah, it's just the shin guard.
And it's the shin guard, just like in the mini comics. And I'm just sitting there going, I would much rather have this Skeletor than the mass market one. But between the two, I still don't even have a head that is going to make me go, this is the Skeletor for the line now, because I hate the mass market. And this one, it's like, I like what they did where it's an homage to what they did in the original. But I still want a traditional, it doesn't matter if it's a vintage looking toy sculpt or an Alcala version. It's like, either way, there's no good Skeletor head in this line for me at this point. So, welcome to Mattel. This is why this line is not going to be on my must-have list. It's like you're not giving me the stuff that's really wowing me right now for the stuff that like Skeletor and He-Man. Those are like peanut butter and jelly. They're an essential to have in this line. And here we are where those two characters aren't wowing me as much as some of the other ones probably.
Yeah, I like the hood on this Skeletor because it actually looks like it's sitting on, it's his armor. It's sitting like Skeletor's hood should sit low. It shouldn't be like a bonnet. It's it should look like it's part of the armor really. So I like that better on this. Yeah, the face. I'll take this one over the mass release. Like this is my preference. Any day. But this hood with a better face. And I don't know why they went with that open mouth on the mass release. It doesn't even look like he's menacing. It looks like he's just like
it looks like he's surprised.
Yeah, that's more what you get from it.
And it drives me nuts. It's like why do I need a character that's supposed to look evil and menacing looking like it's like no. This is Skeletor. This isn't like if you want to go joke Skeletor, you're not helping this cause because you're really making me think he's going to be in a Nissan commercial.
Exactly.
But getting away from Skeletor because like this to me is the best iteration we've gotten to this point. Man at Arms and Merman for me are really like
they're awesome.
Wow, it's funny that the odd man out for me here is He-Man. There's not really his paint for the harness, the weapons is darker than what we've seen on the other version. He doesn't have a power sword from the way it looks, at least. So I guess they're going to go legit, just axe and shield.
They might have more because Beastman's got nothing here. So, and maybe they will release him with nothing, but I got to imagine he comes with something.
We'll have to see. But, I've always liked the whole axe and shield thing for He-Man because of how I started the line. So I kind of dig that. But, other than, is he going to have the wrist guard or not? That kind of thing. It's like that's pretty much the only big reveal left on He-Man that is going to make me go, oh, they went there. Cool. The other ones.
The head's at least better than He-Man 2. I don't know what they did, but it's more vintage style. It's much closer.
The hair. I figured it out over the weekend. The hair looks way more traditional. The new one, I feel like they tried to do the face, but the new one, the hair didn't translate the way that we traditionally see it. This looks way more like the vintage figure to me. So his face really does have that, it's the closest we've gotten to we're home again for that. But one thing I want to bring up though about the line in general, and this will be the end of my soapbox, and it shouldn't take too long, is it's been addressed a couple places, but the thing about Origins for me is it looks clinical.
Yeah.
And that's what's driving me the most crazy about this line. In 1982, when this whole deal started, there was definitely a feeling of it was handmade.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's mass produced, it was a handmade sculpt to make these figures. And every iteration of it has been, it's a hand rendered toy line, all the way up through classics, where we, like there's some asymmetry going on and stuff. And when I look at this line, it looks like, okay, it's CAD drawings come to life. And that's another thing that just bums me out about it too, is there is a personal touch completely missing from how this line is. And that's a huge reason. It's like, this is almost if somebody went to the 80s from now, time traveled back then, saw the Masters figures and came back and go, I could 3D sculpt these. And they just mass produced them in that way, and there is like a clinicalness to these.
Yeah.
And I feel like Masters is one of those lines that it deserves that hand rendered touch to it in that way to bring back the nostalgia more.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. This is the first line that has not started, well, in the modern era, that has not started with a 4 horseman sculpt. I mean, it was done by Mattel. I know the Horsemen had talked about taking a crack at it and kind of refining it, but I don't know if that ever happened, honestly. I haven't heard the Horsemen talk about it since that exclusive came out, that first one.
I keep wondering if Mattel is being more insular with this than they've ever been, because now they're like, oh crap, this is the line that we need to blow the roof off the joint. And they've always done, oh, well, the Horsemen can do this and the Horsemen can do that in the previous lines. And it feels like they've taken it over so much that they're kind of missing what the Horsemen brought to it every time. There is definitely a less Horsemen and a more corporate feeling to it for me this time around.
Which is funny because, okay, so now we backed off that completely. So now these are all, the Buck system was designed by Mattel. That's what they're going to use going forward. But now, where they used to lack was in the packaging. Classics had terrible packaging. It was not inspiring. It was, the best ones were like the vehicles, where they actually went out and got artists to do pictures for the vehicle and like the playset boxes. And so now for these, now they're farming out all of the packaging again. And they're taking the toy design back in-house and they're farming out the packaging. And that's one thing I gotta say about Origins. This stuff is gonna have the best packaging since 1989. I mean, that's
basically
everything I've seen looks awesome. I think I'm more excited about that than I am about the actual figures, especially for the mass market versions.
I agree there. I mean, the closest we've gotten to something that really excited me in the last 4 or 5 years was the Ultimates.
Yeah.
Because the minute you saw a classic figure on that card back, that was such a 1-2 punch of, like, I love the figures, I loved all the articulation with those figures, and then you throw that nostalgic red and blue background behind them with the rocks exploding. It's like, how can you not sit there and just get like a grin and turn into like a 5-year-old, like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Absolutely.
And we're getting that with these, thankfully. That's going to be a selling point for me. I think there is going to be that initial, like, I'll see it and go, oh, because I haven't seen it on the peg since the 80s.
Yeah, when we see it in stores, I think a lot of us will be buying more than we think we're gonna.
Probably, and that's what drives me up the wall about it. Is I know I'm trying to be the guy, like, no, I'm gonna stick to my principles on this, and then the other part of me is gonna be like, I damn well know when I see He-Man, and I probably even with Skeletor, I'm gonna look past all that, and I'll be like, but I gotta get at least these guys because it's He-Man and Skeletor, and then
throw out
the rabbit hole begins.
That's it. And then they it'll probably be like I am with classics. I'm like, well, I have to have certain figures. Like if I saw a new Snout Spout on the shelf, like even if he looked terrible, I'd be like, oh man, I gotta get Snout Spout. Like he's one of my favorites. Cyclone. I don't know.
Manny faces for me. Honestly, the first couple waves, I'm kind of screwed because if I saw them on the shelf, I mean, Scareglow, Manny faces, He-Man, Skeletor, Tila, I'm like, oh, come on, you know. But we'll see. I'd be curious how deep this is going to go for the line, to be honest.
Takes off. I think it depends on how Revelations and He-Man and the Masters of the Universe do. And I will point out here in this background, for those of you who can't see, that is a Classics Castle Grayskull up behind Merman there that they used for the shoot. So, and there's already rumors floating around about that they may just repurpose the Classics Castle for the Origins line. You know, maybe not as many accessories or whatever, but that'll
work well for me.
That's what I was going to say. For those of you who don't have a Classics Castle Grayskull, you might want to hold off for a little bit because
$700 on eBay
is
definitely.
Is it really up to that much now?
The last couple, and I'm not looking like every day at this stuff. I'm just curious to see what it is here and there. The last couple I saw, it was $700, and there was a guy that trying to sell one for almost $1,200 and this and that. And for me, I'm like, you know, I tried to get one around New Year's, and that fell through, and that was not as steep as some of those numbers, and even the number I was trying to get to was pretty rough. Yeah. So if they repurposed it, I'm not going to fight them. That would be probably the greatest reason to buy this line then.
Yeah, well, even if you don't buy the line, you just buy the castle and put it up there right behind you there.
But to get them to the castle is my whole thought process. Once they get to the castle, then I'd be like, okay, I'm good. I got the Castle Grayskull, and I'm good to go, or whatever. But we'll have to see what it looks like.
Yeah, the rumors are that it's going to be coming sooner or later. There was that leaked list out of the German toy fair, which has not been It has not been validated at all. But I think it had it in like Wave 2, which I think it was estimating they were trying to get out like around Christmas time. So I mean,
oh boy,
I think it's supposed to be pretty quick here. Wave 1 around August or so, you know, the fall, and then Wave 2 probably around October, November, like in time for the holiday season. So we could have quite a bit on the shelves before the holidays here.
The only thing about it that for me is going to be let's see what happens. I'm not a big fan of the paint apps on this line at all. Like, it's so just simple paint. And I get it's a mass market line. They're not going to go as crazy for the price point that they're trying to do. But there is that element of, okay, if I buy a Grayskull, is it going to be so bare bones with the paint apps that then I'm going to want to have to customize it, which I don't do a whole lot of that. So I'm going to be there going, great, so how am I going to make this work? But to be honest, if I paid $50 for a Castle Grayskull over $700 right now, I'm not going to be a beggar. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be a chooser. I'm a beggar at this point. I want a Castle Grayskull to go with the classics. I'll take it, and you know, if I only pay $50 or even $100 for the thing,
seems to be about the standard for large play sets now. The TMNT, the sewer layers, that's always about $100. So that's pretty much your benchmark there.
I can justify still like doing some paint with that and not feeling as jerky as I would to buy a $700 version of it off of eBay. And that would just be like pristine. It's sitting on a table. Nobody touches it, you know. And any cat that knocks it off is automatically out the door, that kind of thing.
Any kid that knocks it off is automatically out the door. What you talking about?
I have a feeling that if my son saw that, he'd probably be down in the basement all the time and he'd want to live in it. So
my son, I let my kids play with mine, you know. I'm always there. I don't let them just like take it and run off, and he knows to take care of my stuff. So, but he loves it. It's a blast, and it's so huge, you know, watching him sit there at 8 years old and like him sitting down, it's like as tall as him still, and my kids are not short kids. So, but yeah, it's awesome. It brings back so many memories. So, so that's the Powercon. Switch back here. All right. So now, we bored you guys all long enough. Hopefully we got some people still stuck around. Now we have our episode of the week. So we went Filmation again here. Well, I went Filmation again. This was my episode. And this is actually the first time Sean's watched this episode, right? At least that you can recall.
Without giving away what we're getting into, I never really dealt with it as much as we're about to or we're going to by doing this podcast. So it's the very first time I ever sat through this one.
All right, so we've got the She-ra. Yes, we're finally doing She-ra. Yeah, She-ra, Princess of Power. This is Darksmoke and Fire. This was I didn't pay attention. Season 1, I'm pretty sure. And this was written by J. Michael Straczynski, who's gone on to do a couple other things. It was directed by...
Just a few.
And he doesn't talk about He-Man and She-ra much anymore, I'll tell you that. It was directed by Ernie Schmidt. The script was approved in January 25th, 1985. The final script revision was March 26, 1985. And the UK air date was July 2nd of 1990.
Wow.
Yeah, I know I'd heard about like the UK, and I think I mentioned this before, the UK would split up seasons really weird. Like they didn't do like these big massive seasons, I guess, like the US does. They do like these short little like 10, 12 episode seasons, and then they take like a long break. So yeah, I know some of the She-ra stuff didn't get there for a while. So that's I almost dropped my cup.
That would be no good.
Let me see. Yeah, it is season 1, towards the end of season 1. So, in this episode, we've got the big thing about this is that this is the Granamyr episode of She-ra, which kind of surprised me last night when I watched it again, seeing that it was written by J. Michael Straczynski, because in my head I always attributed this to Larry DiTillio, just because he created Granamyr, and I think he did all the other Granamyr episodes, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong there too. But my mind always...
The ones I know.
Yeah, my mind always equates him with Granamyr, because he obviously created him. So basically, it starts off here in the Fright Zone. Hordak and Modulok are talking about their new plan. They've invented this rocket that targets the magical gateways, the portals that He-Man and She-ra use to go between Eternia and Etheria. And when it detects that a gateway's open, it locks onto it. This rocket launches, and it'll disrupt the gateway, and so that whoever's in the gateway doesn't make it to where they're supposed to. It'll knock them somewhere else. Which that's a pretty solid plan. Like I don't know how Sean feels about it, but I always thought that like this is a really inventive plan here. That's what I liked about Modulok in the Filmation series. He was the only one to ever think about like secret identities, and he always came up with these unique plans. You know, he's going to double his intelligence by creating a second head, you know, stuff like that. And so this is yet another one to me where it's like, okay, that's a pretty neat plan, knowing how they must travel back and forth with Hordak of his knowledge of Eternia and Etheria, you know. No thoughts on that?
For me, no. I have thoughts. I basically
he's just sitting there like, I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes.
No. So as I said going into this, I think my whole experience watching She-ra was mostly He-Man episodes. Yeah. Because the minute that you find out He-Man's on an episode, for me, when I was that age, it was like, sweet, you know? It's like, and so the majority of the episodes I remember of She-ra, other than The Secret of the Sword, usually revolved around Frosta or somebody wanting to flirt with He-Man and Sweet Bee and all that. And so I have that, and that's about the extent. And even the Christmas special, I have that. Right. And so this, for me, was like a whole nother ball of wax, because I don't remember Modulok much on the cartoon. I know he was on it, but I don't remember him much from it. And to see him being the one coming up with this plan, I'm like, all right, that's kind of cool. Like Hordak's actually using his guys, unlike Skeletor would have been doing a whole different way. He would have been like bad mouthing Trapjaw for coming up with this idea in another watch or something, and instead we have Hordak's actually like, yeah, let's see if this will work. This sounds like a fun idea, and the premise of it, I think there's logic things in it that make me just kind of question stuff. And again, it's 40-year-old logic versus when you're a 6-year-old kid watching it, it's a little different. But like, I think the thing for me was a rocket, and depending where she is on Etheria when this opens, how is it going to get there fast enough? And there's things like that for me, I was like, I got to quit nitpicking this already because it's annoying the crap out of me for nitpicking. But
then
but the idea is actually really cool.
There is a slight nitpick too, because all they mention too is, well, He-Man and She-Ra travel between these, so we'll get She-Ra, when really they also should have thought, well, Adora would too, because Hordak's the one who stole her from, Eternia as an infant. He knows that she must go back to visit her family from time to time. So yeah, I poked a little bit at that. Well, like, how are you sure you're going to get She-Ra? Because, they need to treat it like, obviously they don't know, so there should have been that worry too. But yeah, there is a little bit of cartoon logic there, but that they actually
definitely
made a rocket rather than something else that just disrupts it. But
yeah, I mean, it reminds me. The plan itself is actually a really cool plan, but I think the main thing is it reminded me of Secret of the Sword, when Hordak turns into the rocket to go into Eternia and then team up with Skeletor. Because I'm watching that going, that portal's going to close before the rocket gets through it. And then all of a sudden, just at that last second, whoop, right through. And I'm like, that's just like that scene. And
I knew you'd mention that too. Watching it, I'm like, oh, I know how he feels about Hordak Rocket, and that's basically the same setup. I knew it would remind you of it.
It's similar, but it wasn't Hordak this time, so I'm okay with it for that reason. And again, my Hordak is more of an evil sorcerer tyrant versus he turns himself into things and transmorphs and all this other stuff, or transforms, whatever way you want to call it. Now,
did you, since you said you don't remember Modulak from here, do you remember the Modulak episodes from the He-Man series? Because he had a couple there first, actually.
That's the thing. With us doing the podcast, it's reawakening all this stuff with me at this point. Because the main episodes that I would go back to on Filmation are the big ones when I was rewatching them on video and DVD. So I don't remember getting through every single episode of the series since I was a kid. So we're gonna have a bunch of Sean don't know crap. Why is he on this podcast? Episodes probably, because I'm gonna be sitting here going, I didn't realize this.
I think that every time we get done recording, I'm like, man, why do I even have that phone? I should just be sitting here talking.
Why is he on this with me? I should do it myself.
I was just curious because he was actually on He-Man a couple times, and they actually had the episode where he defected from Skeletor's ranks and joined the Horde. Like, he actually has a whole story arc between the two series, which is pretty neat.
See that I'm gonna have fun relearning those and rewatching those, because that for me is, I don't remember that. I'm sure I've seen them, because when I was a kid, I remember I had to get Modulak. It was a big deal to get him as a toy. And it did tie into the fact that he was on the show, and I knew aspects of him from the show. And I think I saw the episodes before I even got the figure. Right. So that was the whole, I could play with him and he could be like a double agent kind of character and all that. But
absolutely.
But no, like this was the first time in a while where I'm like, hey, Modulak's here. That's pretty cool and stuff. So, and yeah, the idea of this plan I actually think is pretty interesting, because the whole premise of it is get her out of our way. She'll never come back.
She'll be lost in the cosmos somewhere. And
yeah. We could steamroll over the Great Rebellion, and Etheria is ours.
So luckily Adora is leaving at that moment to, cartoon logic again. Adora is summoning Light Hope through the sword and having him open a portal for her so that she can go home and visit her family. And I always like that animation where anybody who's talking through the sword, if it's the sorceress or Light Hope or whoever, that was always a really cool thing for me. So she heads into the portal, and I found it funny when they show her going through the portal. She just kind of like, because they've shown Adam running through the portal before He-Man in a couple episodes, and he's like powering through. He's running, and there's flashing lights and everything. And then when Adora's going through, she just kind of like coasting, taking her time. She's like on her back, like floating.
That was killing me.
You kind of get the feel. It's like the kid that goes off to college and like comes home and visits her family all the time. Like she's just like chilling on the plane, just like, okay, here we go. I got like, I got a half hour, and then I'll be on Eternia or whatever.
There's no in-flight movie.
Yeah. Yeah, she's
with her the laying back thing. I can't help it. That was making me snort because and it's appropriate. It's a She-Ra episode with Hordak.
Yeah.
But just watching that, I'm like, I remember when they would go through portals on He-Man, it would usually be, here's the standing shot of the character, and they would have the portal whatever that is, the glistening or whatever. Of the energy, and it's like their silhouette, and then you just see them going through the screen or whatever, and in this one it's like, no, we actually see her just like she's swimsuit bunnying it up a little bit, like showing a little bit of leg and all that.
Yeah, she's just cruising, she's coasting through all these planets and everything. And then that rocket comes by and just like disrupts her whole thing. It's spinning her around and knocking her off course, and all these doors open up, and like the whole background changes. There was like planets and stuff, and that's a great little sequence of animation there. And she just ends up falling through one of the doors and landing just in the middle of this forest. Which again, here I like this too. This is kind of like in The Search, where once again here we just have Adora doesn't transform until she has to. She doesn't just transform because there's this rocket messing her up. She doesn't transform because she's falling. I like it when they show that Adam and Adora are tough. I mean, Adora's probably tougher than Adam. She was raised by, Fright Zone commandos.
I was just going to say that. Like, out of the two of them, I honestly think she'd probably kick his butt. So.
Absolutely. So she winds up in this place. She's kind of disoriented at first, but then she realizes some landmarks around her and realizes that she did wind up on Eternia, so she's good. She mentions King's Hill, which right on the other side should be the Royal Palace. And I mean, obviously, the big thing of this episode is, I'll just say it right now, because this... spoilers if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, I don't know why you're listening to us. You were supposed to go watch it. I didn't say that beforehand. All right, pause us here. Go watch it and come back. Okay, thanks. You're back. So, and obviously she gets to the top of the hill, and the castle, the Royal Palace isn't there where it's supposed to be. And this shot was disappointing because, as we're going to find out here later, she landed on Eternia, but she's 1,000 years before the time of King Randor. So she went back in the past, which is the big hook of the episode, and I like it. I like time traveling. As long as we don't think too hard about it, I like time traveling stories. But I was disappointed in this shot here because instead of using the regular like Royal Palace shot, where it's sitting up on the plateau hill, whatever. They used like a completely different shot. And I know it's supposed to be like 1,000 years in the past, but I thought even rewatching it last night for a minute there, I'm like, oh, it'll be like that regular shot we're used to seeing, but no Royal Palace on top of that hill. And it was a little disappointing that they didn't go there. Like it should have been that that stock pan in where they always show it sitting up there. If they just done that, but then not have the palace on top, I think that would have been really cool.
Yeah. The thing for me that I noticed about She-Ra in this episode, or I should say Adora, not She-Ra, but in her episodes, and correct me if I'm wrong, because in He-Man, I'm like I said, I've only gone to the greatest hits for the longest time, so I might be off here. But I honestly feel like they make Adora have to narrate way more than I ever remember Adam or He-Man narrating in their episodes when they do things. And that is a double-edged sword for me. some ways, because there's parts where I'm just like, I don't need her to keep talking. I get it. It's visual. I can see what's happening. But then that was the one moment where I'm like, thank God you explained that, because dear Lord, like that shot, I would have never understood other than her, oh no. And then I'd have been like, okay, I'm guessing the castle's not there. And then when she said it's not there, I'm like, okay, because exactly, it's the same reason. That shot wasn't there to establish it like we were used to.
And I know they say, okay, well, in 1,000 years, landmarks can change, whatever.
Sure.
But I still think it's a missed opportunity right there to show. And then they wouldn't have had to narrate. And I can't really answer that, Sean. I hadn't really thought about it. I think all the characters tend to do that when they're in a scene alone in these shows.
Yeah.
Like even in some of the newer series, like Mike Young, they were a little more quiet when they were alone. But like He-Man's always seems to have like Battlecat or Orko or somebody there where they can talk off each other. So I don't know. I hadn't really thought about that. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind as we watch more episodes.
I am too, just because I was like, man, I feel like they're making her pad this episode by talking a bit. And sometimes I was like, I don't need to hear the talking. It was given. If you're watching it, it's like it's right there on the screen.
Right.
And that was just something I picked up because, like I said, I didn't watch She-Ra too much. I don't know if that's a thing about She-Ra or just this episode.
Yeah,
so.
I think just here, just because she's alone and they're trying not to bore the kids, I guess. Try and keep them entertained. But yeah, so she realizes that the palace is missing. Excuse me. And then she sees this man running from these angry villagers and everything. And this gets into the conflict of this episode is that here in the past this is known as Dragon Valley. And there's a group of Eternians that live in peace with the dragons and they work together, and then there's this small group that hates dragons and lives by themselves, and the two are they're not quite warring, but tensions are high. And so they're attacking this guy, and She-Ra ends up saving him from the mob, but then a dragon comes and attacks She-Ra. And I will say one thing, I love that they made She-Ra a completely different fighter than He-Man. And she's very acrobatic. She's very gymnastic, Like she does lots of spins and flips, and I've always loved her kicks. She does like those cool roundhouse kicks and everything. I always like watching a She-Ra battle. There's just something about it. Like she does the spinning trick, like we equate with her, ever since Secret of the Sword when she does it to Webstone and Cobra Khan. I'm a sucker for that. I like it.
It's impressive that the one documentary, I think it was the Power of Grayskull one, they actually had J. Michael Straczynski on that one.
Yeah.
And he was actually saying, they had a big problem where the whoever it was that was overseeing the production of the cartoons and, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. And it is interesting to note how the action happens on She-Ra compared to He-Man. He-Man would have that moment where he's like punching the screen and all that stuff. And She-Ra, it's more she kicks the screen and things happen in, like you said, an acrobatic way, or in a like she's subverting somebody putting a move and she'll like move out of the way or whatever, and then they get in trouble because of their momentum and stuff. And I was watching this episode going, yeah, they're doing that on this. I could definitely see that effect on this show. Versus He-Man, he would have just grabbed a boulder and that would have been the end of the fight right there.
And she does that stuff from time to time too, but it's to me it's always, and it's kind of like what like especially like in the Batman series, like if you look at Batgirl or the Robins, like they always kind of have more this fighting style where they're more acrobatic, they're more, like you said, they're using the other guy's momentum against them because they're smaller or not necessarily weaker, but just the body builds and everything. Like you see Tim Drake, he's usually doing like he's chopping legs out from under, he's throwing them off balance and stuff like that. Batgirl, she was a gymnast, and that's how she uses her fighting. So I like that. I mean, they could have easily just gone, since she is very powerful, they could have easily just gone punching and hitting and just a He-Man copycat, but they really give her her own fighting style, which is fun to watch.
Yeah.
But then she gets attacked by this dragon, and she's It's a bit of a challenge for her going up against a dragon by herself. So I like that too. I like when same with He-Man. I like when characters have limits on them, that they're not just all powerful.
Agreed.
And they're fighting pretty much to a standstill. He's got her pinned down. She's her classic sword to shield, which is one of the best transformations, and at least one of the ones that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just say it right now. Like, that's one of those things. It's like the Hordak thing for me. I just kind of wish the shield, the sword could be a sword. You know, like that's another one of those things. It's like I get they're doing it, and I get that there's a usefulness to it and everything. But there is an element of, you know, if you just have a sword to work with, how do you make that work in these situations? Yeah. And you know, it's like it's cartoon logic again. In this case, it's like, all right, you know, I'm rolling with it here, but I know there's going to be transformations where I'm going to look at you and go, really, Matt? Yes. She did that this episode.
And I will too, honestly. And since this is our first She-Ra episode, we can talk about this trope a little bit. I like the sword transforming. I don't like the sword being able to transform into basically anything she can put her mind to. Thank you. I'm okay with that too. Then. Okay, good. To me, it shouldn't be a Green Lantern construct where, okay, I need a 10-foot pole, I need a net, I need a breathing helmet. Like,
exactly.
It should have a finite number. I like sword to shield. I mean, that just makes perfect sense. And I like the idea of giving Adora these secondary things, or She-Ra these secondary weapons or whatever, this way, rather than He-Man's just, I've got everything tucked into the waistband of my loincloth. Like,
which that always bugged me too.
I got a bolo here. I got a grappling hook.
Want to use bolo?
Here's my shield. Here's I like how they did that without. Because I mean, obviously, like you said, Filmation's under these restrictions. They can't be too violent. But they also want, and so no one really carries their weapons around a lot. No one's armored up in the way, like even Mike Young was armored up or anything else, you know. So it doesn't make sense for these warriors to, I mean, you don't see anything on them. And plus the stock animation that they had to be able to flip and everything, it had to all be symmetrical. So to me, this is a more clever way of giving her a whole arsenal of equipment than just saying like, oh, let me reach behind my cape.
Yeah, which that would have driven me nuts too. I think my guideline with what I'm comfortable with and what I can agree with the sword is always going to be if it involves protecting someone, it's called the sword of protection. So the idea of sword to shield, even though I'm not a huge fan of it, just poof and it happens like it does, like almost a magic trick. If it was something where like today I can almost see it where like the jewel is going to be the centerpiece of whatever it turns into. So which like I'm
shield.
Picturing
it goes to the very toy-esque shield. I mean, it's not spot on, but it is toy.
No, but what I mean is in like a new version of it, and we're not even talking the Netflix. We're talking like if they came out with like on Revelation, for instance, if they did it. And they wanted to say, okay, we're going to only let her do protective things with the sword and not just sword to rope, sword to flame, whatever, you know, that sort of stuff. It's like I can almost see it being like the jewel, and then like all of a sudden you see like the metal coming from it in like it's building itself around the sword or something. That's kind of where I would be like, yeah, that'd be cool compared to poof, and then it's something else. Again, limitations of the time, limitations of the animation. And it makes sense with it being magical, but like I think my sensibilities now, I'm like I'm okay with that because I grew up with it, but I would like to see it done in a cooler way if it ever was introduced again later on here.
I think one way or the other. Eternity War, when she did Sword to Shield, I know she did it, but I think it was more like that, more of a magical construct coming off of the sword rather than actually the sword transforming. If I remember correctly.
And that's kind of what, I don't know, that's just the way, like I said, 6-year-old me versus 40-year-old me. There's that element of, you know, like I kind of dig visually, there's ways of doing it now that I think would be really cool if they could pull it off in any version. But again, Sword to Shield, I'm not going to fight you. Sword to Shield works. It's protective.
I like Sword to Shield and I like Sword to Rope. It's that animation. It's like because the whole sword like changes into rope and it's just like sword shaped, and then she like and whips then she can... it. It's like, yeah, I mean that's cool animation. I don't care what you say. That's I like that. I like sword.
I don't know. It's
I know.
It's just the thing of it's a metal object getting turned into fibers of rope, and that for me is like, okay, we're dealing with again. I don't know. I'm overthinking ridiculously, so I need to shut up basically. But it is that feeling of like, I know it's a spell, but there is it's metal turning into fibers of rope. Yeah. I don't know why I can't jump that logic. I can do the other one, no problem. Chain.
If she did sword to chain,
yeah. If it was like, sword to chain or something, yeah, I think that would make a little more sense because you're not transmuting one element for a whole different thing in that way, I guess. But like sword to like the sword to space helmet, I remember that one, and I was like, like why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, definitely. If they ever do it again, I want a list. It can be this, this, and this, and that's it. Like that's it's got to have its limits.
Exactly. It's too easy to go to. She can pull anything out of her hat doing that, and I'd rather see like she only has maybe 3 to 5 options with the sword, and if it's not a metal option, then she's like, well, crap. Now what am I going to do? And it makes it have a better chance of making the story feel like we got to try for something now versus it's just the Deus Ex Machina thing of, oh, well, it can turn into whatever to get her out of the situation or whatever.
Absolutely. So
that will be our rant. There you go.
That's well, like rant. I said, it seems like this
is the first one.
Time discussing anything seems to be a little longer because we got to get to the basics. So I mean, this is our first She-ra episode we've covered. So, So anyway, so then while they're fighting, the dragon and She-ra are fighting, then the man that She-ra saved wakes up because he got knocked out, and he tells the dragon's name is Bright Star. Tells Bright Star, stop, she saved me, and then it turns out that Bright Star is one of the sentient dragons from Darksmoke, not the mindless green ones. And I've always liked that Eternia's got like 2 dragon classes. Like there's the mindless creatures and then there's like the sentient magical ones. Like that's always been cool to me. And so Tarbin and Bright Star, they work together. And so then they're trying to figure out who she is, where she's from, and they end up taking her to visit Granamyr in Darksmoke. So, and it's really cool seeing She-ra with Granamyr and everything in the chamber back. Obviously, it's going to be Granamyr's last appearance in either series. This is actually Modulok's last appearance in the series too, but
he got fired. Because of how this episode worked out.
And so then Granamyr, he can't figure out because she's talking about like, she knows him because He-Man's told her about him, but he's like, I love this line from here because she's like, well, King Randor and Man at Arms and Orko, and she's like naming all these people she knows, and Granamyr goes, I do not know of any King Randor or Man at Arms or anything called an Orko.
Yeah, I like that line. I seeing him show up in this made me smile. Yeah. And you would think the title would have tipped me off to it, but Darksmoke could have meant anything in my opinion with what. Well, it's She-ra though, so that's part of why I didn't even go there in my head. I'm like, oh well, it could mean something else. And then when we see Granamyr show up, it's like there's that feeling of when you have a spin-off show when they go back to the normal stomping grounds, and there's like more weight to that episode. And Granamyr comes in here, and there's like weight in spades with him just having his moments in here, and I like that. They had that line about, he heard of the legend of some of these characters on the winds and all that stuff.
Yep, that's exactly.
And I like that this is a taste of that in this, where it's the whole he met She-ra, but she met She-ra 1,000 years before He-Man and all that. I dig that.
Oh God, why am I blanking on that episode name, Sean? The Dragon's Gift. Oh, God.
The Dragon's Gift. Okay.
I was about to take away my Masters
greatest
card.
Greatest hits.
Yeah, it puts... And that's like my big moment in this episode. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to do it, is because it puts the Dragon's Gift in a whole different perspective. And it really even plays up that assholeness of Granamyr even more in Dragon's Gift, because he knows who He-Man is when he shows up. You know, he makes the comment during Dragon's Gift, "I've heard that name on the winds of legend." And it's like, he's talking about like, "Oh, I met your sister 1,000 years ago." Like, I like that. I like that. It puts a little, but he still puts He-Man through his paces. Yeah. He's still like, "Well, I'm still going to test you. I mean, I know that I help you. I know that I give everything, you know, I help Man-at-Arms, but I'm still going to make you work for it." Like, that's Granamyr. And it's neat seeing him in this episode, because they did write him a little friendlier, a little more helpful. You know, you can tell that this is before everything's happened, where he stays up in Darksmoke all the time. Like, Tarvin walks right into his chamber, the human, and just talks to him. Like, that doesn't happen in King Randor's reign, you know, that time. That's, you know, it gives you a taste of how much happened in that 1,000 years between humans and dragons. So, which He-Man starts to repair eventually.
So. The animation on him, the way they drew him, he actually is younger looking as well.
Yeah, he's got a little more of a smile on him, and like
he looks friendlier, even though he is a big giant dragon. But he also has less lines on him, so you can definitely see this one. They de-aged him before Marvel had the chance to start de-aging everybody. He's de-aged in this, and then when you see him later in the Dragon's Gift, he's got more lines, more wrinkles. There's like a wornness to him, and here, my wife says anytime she sees an actor or actress when they're in their like 20s versus how we know them now, they're dewy. He's dewy in this episode.
He is. So he's the one who he reads her thoughts, and he tells her, you know, you're 1,000 years before your time. You know, you got lost in the space portal. And so he says his magic's not powerful enough to send her back. Like, he says he can do one or the other. He can do like, I can send you through space back to Etheria, or I can like sit or possibly time, but I can't do both. Like, I can't. It's too much for even him. But he says he's going to work on it. And then we get back with the villagers, the humans, and we've got this evil sorcerer Nazgul, and he's very anti-dragon, and he's been trying his best to get all this anti-dragon sentiment, you know, raised up and everything, and so he's trying to find a way to light a spark, you know, and he finally figures out a way. He literally burns down one of the farmhouses in the village and convinces the people of the village that the dragons did it, which...
Yeah, that was their food for the winter.
Yes, it was a storehouse. Yep.
It was like they were harvesting, and then boom, he in one moment of him wanting to discredit the dragons, then boom, he just sets the whole thing on fire with a spell. And I couldn't help it. You picked this one, and it made me go, Curse of the Spellstone.
Yeah, you know,
because it's the whole him rallying the group against the dragons, just like Evelyn rallied the villagers against the Eternian palace.
We keep finding these common themes between the episodes we pick, and it entered my mind when I was watching it last night, but before I picked it, I'm just like, well, I want to do a She-Ra episode this week, and this is one of my favorites that's not really talked about, so that's why I went with this, and it's a Granamyr episode. It's the Granamyr episode that doesn't get a lot of press, so... but yeah, watching it last night, I thought the same thing, and that's and honestly, even... It shows how Filmation had a way of handling social issues without beating you over the head with it. Like, because you can definitely see... Filmation was all about equality. They always wanted to show women as strong as men. They wanted to show that no race was weaker than another, or that I mean, you can see it in the way they wrote their stories and the messages of their stories, but they didn't feel like they had to sit there and beat you over the head with it either. Like, they're just, you know, I mean, you can take any sort of parallel you want out of this, put the dragons as one group and the humans as another, and, you know, apply it to any real world situation without having to put real world situations in there, you know. And they did it in He-Man too. Eye of the Beholder is a good one where they're talking about, you know, He-Man judging Garth, you know, because he's an ugly insect man. They do it a lot, but they don't beat you over the head with it, and I like that. I like that it's just these little subtle things that we didn't even think about as kids, but then you're watching it, and it's like, well, that, honestly, well, I didn't see this episode as a kid, but the ones I did see, you know, I think it helped. I think it helped influence, and, you know, it preached tolerance, you know, so. That's my tangent. I'm just saying, for all the people who say that Filmation's just fluff in games and Orko clapping like a madman, there's a lot of heart and soul in these. But back to the story. So he convinces the villagers that the dragons are to blame, and so then they're finally ready to take action. They're going to just attack Dragon Valley outright, and they're gonna kill all the dragons. Basically, is their plan. Although since it's Filmation, we can't kill. They've got this special goop that if they hit the dragons with, it robs them of all their powers and puts them to sleep.
Yeah.
Which, if this had been done nowadays, or even in Mike Young days, they would have been out there killing dragons, you know. So, but basically, that's what's going on here. They're just gonna kill the whole valley. They're gonna take all the powers away. And Nazgul, he's got a subplane, which is, as they're hit with this goop, it transfers their fire power, literally their fire power, into this red gem that he has, and it gives him their power.
Yeah.
So he's gonna take care of all the dragons. He's gonna get all powerful and rule, you know, Eternia. So, and there's a nice moment in between here with She-ra and Tarban. And she's you know, she's feeling down. She's a little depressed. She's thinking, you know, I'm never going to see my family again. I'm never going to see my friends again. What's going to happen to the Great Rebellion? You know, she's really quite upset, and he's, you know, he's consoling her, telling her, you know, they'll find a way to get her back. And I like this. I like showing the human side of, and She-ra got to do this a little bit more than He-Man. He-Man would never quite, you know, be able to show his emotions like this. So I like that.
Yeah. I think that was their shorthand for, we can do this in this show because it is easier for a woman character or a female character to be open with this. Like the episodes that I can think of where He-Man had anything like that, it was him by himself.
Right.
Like Prince Adam No More and stuff like that. You have that moment where you see him and it's like the look on his face is so not what you would ever see He-Man do.
Right.
But in that moment of decision. But in this one, yeah, it's like She-ra, I always felt, was way more open with that kind of stuff, whether herself or other characters on the series and the episodes I've seen.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Quest for the Sword's another good one, when He-Man thinks he's not going to be able to turn back into Prince Adam again. There's a little bit of that, but he's still got to, he's still got to be strong. Like especially back here. I mean, we're talking mid 80s. I mean, there's it just shows how far we've come, you know. But it's nice being able to see that. Like she's legitimately upset, and she has a right to. Like, I'm 1,000 years before my time, and you know, and especially consider the implications. All my friends are going to die because the rebellion is not strong enough to overcome the Horde without me. You know, that's just fact. So, and she finds out that Tarban's actually the king of his people. And he's, I kind of like his attitude. She's like, "You're a king?" And he's like, "I've never cared much for titles. Like, I'm just a guy. I lead my people." And that shows you this is like a little more of a barbaric time. Like, he's more, I think we've talked about this before. Like in this time, it's just more like, it's not stately king. It's just, you know, like, oh, I lead my people and I help everybody survive, you know. Because he's not fancy. Yeah. He has no crown, nothing. He's just, you know, I lead some people once in a while.
It doesn't hurt that I'm handsome as well, though. That's the thing about him. Like he ends up being the guy. Like he's George Clooney of Preternia, basically. In that way, he's got that swagger. He's very modest, though. He is. He doesn't wear it on his sleeve.
Right.
Well, I am a king. He doesn't do any of that kind of stuff. So,
hang on one second, Sean. So, She-ra and Tarvin, they go to help the dragons. They get word that the Dragon Valley is being attacked, and they go to help them. And they've already taken a few dragons down. She-ra and Tarvin get there, and yeah, go ahead.
No, the one moment that got me in this, and my cat is deciding that she's going to be annoying right now. Yeah, she's the sweet one, but she's really annoying right now. The thing that killed me about this is they have it almost made me think of like a Muppet sketch. They have the two dragons flying over, and like, I hear they have something that's going to take away our power, and then the one gets hit with it. He's like, so sleepy, and he falls down. And there's an element of that where I was like, I could not laugh. It was the way that not only the dialogue, but the way the voice acting was. It's just like, in this kind of a moment, you would think they'd have a different voice going on for that. It's the so sleepy boom or whatever, and I couldn't help it. That moment got me.
They did that with all the dragons in this episode, because Bright Star's got that very like. It's that high John Irwin voice again. It's that, I'm trying to think of another character he does. Like, I think he did Sorrowful. Probably don't remember Sorrowful. He was a Etherian dragon from the She-ra series.
When I look at a dragon, that's not the voice.
Almost the Comic Keeper voice, because I'm pretty sure he did that one too.
Yeah, and it's like there's definitely times where I'm like, that voice doesn't match anything like I think a dragon should sound like, but then it makes it funny to me. I can't help it. So that whole sequence just had me. I wasn't like laughing to the point of tears, but I was just like, that was just funny. And I felt bad because they're in trouble, and I'm laughing at them more than I feel like, it's no good. They're getting knocked out or whatever.
I think that was intentional too. I think they did that on purpose to
lighten it up a little,
because this is the battle scene. So She-ra and Tarvin, they help the villager, or help the dragons. They're fighting off the racist villagers, and destroying their catapults and everything that they're launching that goo with. And we forgot to talk about him, but Nazgul has this little pet imp guy who called Slotty. Or Slarty.
Yeah.
And he's kind of an idiot. He's kind of an idiot. He kind of reminds me of Iago from Aladdin. Like he's a sentient creature, but he's not the brightest, and he just kind of repeats things like. Yeah, it's weird. He's definitely not an intelligent creature, but he's a step above like just an animal. And so he ends up, while they're fighting, he ends up ratting out. Oh no, it's Nazgul uses the power in the crystal to create this giant fireball, and he says, you've destroyed my weapons, but I've got enough power, I'm still going to destroy you all. And he's going to destroy all Dragon Valley with this ginormous fireball. And then Nazgul says, or Slotty says, oh, well, that's even bigger than the fireball that you used to burn down that farmhouse.
Yeah.
So, all the villagers realize that he lied to him.
Slotty, we were talking about this before we recorded. Slotty was one of those nightmarish contraptions from the Filmation era for me. Like the fact that he has a face that looks almost human, but everything else isn't normal. It's just like, and then on top of that, device. It's device. It's So I was okay that they got caught in the end, like Scooby-Doo, basically.
Yeah. And and Nazgul and Slotty are both character reuses. Nazgul was Toron from Orko's favorite uncle, and then Slotty is Locust from Wizard of Stone Mountain. What's interesting here is usually when they reuse these, they would also recolor them, but they did not with these ones. They are color for color Tauron and Locust. Slightly different voices, and that's unusual for Filmation. They reuse character designs quite a bit. We talked about that, but it was unusual for them not to recolor them. But yeah, I love that. I love that Locust Slotty, whatever you want, that little character. Ever since Wizard of Stone Mountain, I saw that one as a kid, and he was a creepy little guy. So Nazgul's exposed. He retreats, but he still launches the fireball into Dragon Valley to destroy them all. And luckily, She-ra's there because she pulls. I'm sure Sean loved this too. It's not quite creating a tornado, but she spins fast enough to create a whirlwind to put out this giant fireball. So what's better, whirlwind or tornado?
Neither. For me, neither. but I'll probably be honest and say if She-ra does it, I like it better because it reminds me of Wonder Woman with her transformation, the Linda Carter thing. So I'm like, I could deal with that, but He-Man doing it is too Superman for me for some reason. So that it's like She-ra has a cape. There's an element of that where she's more of a superhero than He-Man to me. He-Man looks like a barbarian. So her doing these things that are like, like she has almost like Thor's helmet with the tiara. She's got the cape. Right. She can be a little more superhero, in my opinion, for some reason. He-Man should just be a rough and tumble barbarian who's, more powerful than most men, And but one thing I want to point out here that this got me more than anything too is when Nazgul disappears. He is actually a very nice Nazgul because he says farewell. Not many of the villains that I can think of actually wish somebody farewell. It's like, I know that means bye, but when you say farewell, that usually means they hope that you are well as you leave. And so that the idea of that made me just go like, oh, he's actually kind of nice at deep down. Like, farewell, I bet you would too, It amused me.
He's like, well, I was wrong, and he goes, but I'm still not gonna leave the village or anything. So I'll see you at lunch, okay, guys? This was a good one.
Peace out.
Well, it's
just the little things I keep picking up. It's annoying for me on this episode.
Oh, poor Sean. I really ran him through.
It's horrible to live in my head, I'm telling you. But no, She-ra Whirlwind, I'll give her that. I don't know why. I just will. I'll give her that.
And the fact that it didn't form the perfect funnel cloud like He-Man always did. Like, it was just more like she's just creating this crazy wind. It's like, okay, I can buy that. It's like the Flash. He would be able to create big winds and stuff, but not actually control a tornado or unwind a tornado. Yeah, I'll give it to her. So then they head back to Darksmoke. They save the village. And Granamyr says, and I like this too because it hits on some stuff that we've talked about before. Pretty sure we did on the show. Where Granamyr is like, well, I think I've got something, but I'm going to, a way to send you home, but I'm going to need my magic and I'm going to need the magic from your sword. And I've always liked that certain magic users are powerful enough to sense magical objects. I'm pretty sure I brought that up on the show before.
Yep.
So that was kind of cool. I was just like, hey, sword, it's magical. Let's use it. And I like this sequence here where he's doing his magic in that purple portal, and then she adds, Granamyr's like, oh, well, we dragons have a saying, here goes nothing. And he starts his magic, and then she's like, we have a saying where I'm from. And she does the for the honor of Grayskull.
Yeah. That was cool.
To get the magic going, and then she shoots at his portal like she's transforming Swiftwind, out of the crystal there. And I really like that sequence. That's a really neat use of, it's a stock transformation footage basically, but it's a unique way to use it for me. I like that. It gets you pumped. It's like seeing For me, anytime hearing She-ra say for the honor and her music boiling up is the same as hearing that He-Man theme and the power of Grayskull. Like, it's the same.
Yeah.
It gets my blood pumping either way.
Yeah, and I mean the way it's used here, especially, it's her using it in, she's trying to get back home, and it's almost like there's no place like home, there's no place like home, and it's like what feels more like home on this show than hearing those words from her. It works really well, and I do like the Swift Wind when she would normally turn Swift Wind or Spirit into Swift Wind. I like that they're using that in a way where it's like it's helping to do what needs to be done for her this time around, and I like that they turned it on its head. And like you said, it's a nice reuse, very very well done.
And watching his purple portal that he started, and her magic gets added, and then it like solidifies into the gold, orange, whatever portal that we're all used to, and it's like, oh yeah, it worked. I like that. I like that they use that visual, like changing it. Yeah, that was a good visual to use to signify to the audience, like, look, it worked. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And then she asks if she can control where it's going. He's like, yeah, now that's stable, you can go. You can wind up anywhere you need to. And so she bids them farewell. She jumps through the portal, and then we got a little. I don't know. It's the end of the '87 movie. Actually, Granamyr gives Tarban a little bit of the crystal. So that he can,
I didn't think
so
of
that
that.
he can check in on She-ra. He can see her from time to time in this crystal, since he can never actually see her again.
It's a part of the crystal that was blown up. Nazgul was using. Yeah,
which is kind of I don't know. It's whatever. It's a storybook ending.
I don't know. It's funny to me that there's always that thing about She-ra where they had to always connect it to, at least, I shouldn't say always, but there's this feeling with this episode they have to connect it to, he probably felt things for her, and vice versa. Yeah. It's the time and need. So it's like, in other episodes, I feel like, like even with He-Man, there would have been this sense of, we're good. We don't need to have any like little tag on part like that. But yeah, it's got to be. It's because of the girl. I'm convinced. There's that. Well, we know she looked really nice. So if you need to see her from time to time, there you go.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Well, we'll get to that. Let's finish up the episode, and then I'll talk about that for a minute.
Sure.
Because so then he sees her, and she chooses to pop into the fright zone before heading home. And
I love this part.
Yeah, and Modulak and Hordak are talking, and Hordak's like, "Oh, give me those plans for your rocket, so that we can make a whole fleet of them, and we'll disrupt, every portal that opens up." Which again, solid plan. No reinforcement. We already got rid of She-ra. They said it's been a couple days, so they give some time here. That wasn't just an afternoon in the past. She was, she spent some time there. She legitimately thought that she wasn't making it back, and. He's like, give me your plans, so we can manufacture a whole fleet of them, and we'll just blow up every portal that tries to open. Again, solid plan. No reinforcements will ever come. So Modulak's hand them over to Hordak, and She-ra just pops in the portal right between them and just snags the blueprints there, which turn out to be Modulak's only set of blueprints for this rocket.
Yep, that's what I was just going to say. And I love that. And then I love that she goes, thanks. Yeah. And they both are like, you're welcome. Yeah. And then when they turn, the portal's gone, and they both point at each other. It's your fault. Yeah. I love that part. That was so, like, the fact that even Modulak had the balls to say that to Hordak right there was like, oh, man, this is why, like I said, this is why we don't see him ever again. I'm convinced.
Yeah, it's quite possible. And then that's the end of the episode, and then we got the Lukey moral now. It ties in pretty good. It's about not trying to blame someone else, or say someone else did something they didn't do. So it actually tied into the episode here, so I'm good with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's funny because you brought up about Tarban and all that, and they did kind of have that thing where it felt like he was kind of like attracted to She-ra or whatever. And I think the episode could have done just fine without any of that subtext, or, like I said, that little end hook where he's got the crystal to, see her. And if you really think about it, Tarban is a king. He's 1,000 years in the past, so, my 30-year-old brain, there's a good chance that he is Adora's ancestor somewhere along the line.
That was another part of why I didn't feel it was necessary, because I mean, I know we didn't have King Grayskull for obvious reasons back in the Filmation days, but there is that element of, okay, if we're going into the history of Eternia, and this is somebody who is a king in that era, what are the chances, you know? So in that way, like, I kind of feel like they probably just shoehorned that little like flirtation of romance with them, just because here's a woman. Yeah. Here's a female character, and of course there's got to be that sense of it. And it almost makes me feel like, did you need that?
Right,
like, women and men can work together to do a common goal without needing it to be about romance. Exactly. I'm sorry, it's just, that's possible to happen in any day and age. Mm-hmm. And it didn't need to go there, and I do feel it was such a tagged on thing that it was a sore thumb for me in the episode.
It was, because it was never really explored or anything. Like I said, making him a king. Yes, we know there are kings outside of Randor, you know, and there is other lines not related to Randor's line. But just saying, Dragon Valley is like right where the Royal Palace will be someday. You know, we've met King Tamisk in the He-Man episode, The Time Wheel, who Randor states is one of his descendants. So, you know, it's quite possible.
If you're on Eternia and you're back in time, you don't want to. It's the Marty McFly thing. You don't get involved because there's a chance your mother wants to have sex with you. That's all there is.
That's what everything boils down to.
It's like every time I think of that movie, not to tangent, but every time I think of that movie, I love that movie. And then I'm like, but part of the movie is that, and it's really creepy when you think about that. If you just, that's all you're worried about. But the car is awesome, so we're gonna just focus on the car.
No, yeah, it's definitely a concern. Let's just put it that way.
Yes, I would say it should be.
That's my one big aspect that I wish wasn't there. I wish they'd left that completely out. Just there was no need for it. There wasn't enough time to even explore it. And really, She-Ra didn't even seem to like reciprocate anything. It was more like he was like infatuated with her, like this strange woman and everything. And it was just, I don't know.
So, then there's a stalker creepy vibe then. And that doesn't help me either, because either way, it's like the thing, like Granamyr did that without She-Ra even knowing he did that, which that opens the door to that's creepy in a whole nother way. Because here is this magical dragon giving a dude a part of a crystal so he could sneak in and peep on her every now and then. I mean, there's an element of it could be a very nice, oh, he just wants to see she's okay because they fought together and they won. Or there's an element of he looks in on her at the wrong time. It's like, you pervert, you know? And unfortunately, this is how it gets painted nowadays. Yes. So there is no like nicey version of that anymore. It's definitely the times they are changing. So,
but other than that small nitpick, like I said, I can forgive the action sequences in this show, because especially by this point, I mean, we've talked already too much about the parent groups and all the worries and fears of this time of violence on TV. So you just got all the action sequences. You just kind of got to give them a pass for the time period, in my opinion. But yeah, that's my one big flaw of the episode, is that whole little romance subplot. Other than that, you know, I really like the premise. It's a solid plan from Modulok and Hordak. They're both shown to be, you know, competent. You know, they succeed in their plan. Like I said, the story with Nazgul and the villagers, you know, it's got some really good underlying issues that, you know, it brings to light and helps teach a positive message to kids. And I will say, especially as an adult going back and watching this episode, it really hits you like I said, how far Granamyr's, like, just imagine what's happened to Granamyr in those 1,000 years to go from this to how he is in Dragon's Gift. Like, the atrocities they've witnessed. We know humans and dragons don't get along like they do in Dragon Valley anymore. Like, there's a very adult storyline in between there that you won't see on Filmation, but it still lends itself. Like, that's what we keep saying. You know, Filmation, they can't come right out and tell these adult stories, but if you actually listen to what they're saying, it's there. You know, there is a dark period in this history here.
Yeah, and I could see that easily being part of what happened with this episode, because he, at the end of the episode, Granamyr's like, well, we have plenty of food, so we're happy to share it with you guys. And so when I look at that, I'm like, okay, so the chances of humans just basically going in and raiding those guys now, and they're raiding the dragons, they're pretty high, because now they're going to take advantage of something where he was helping them out of the kindness of his heart, and the reciprocation probably didn't go the right way. People wanted more from him, or this or that. So I like that idea that in your own mind, after watching this, you could definitely come up with a story in your head of, well, that would be how they screw him over, and then he's like, screw humans, you know?
No, exactly. At some point it happens. We know it does. It could be 500 years from this point, but it happened.
Exactly.
So there's a good story here. So I'm gonna go a 7 out of 10. It's not the greatest She-ra episode. It's got its flaws, but it's a solid story, and it makes you think, especially as an adult.
You stole it, because that's exactly what I was going to give it to. So 7 out of 10. Granamyr has presence, and like the storytelling of just that one character being thrown into the mix on this one. We're sitting here spitballing ideas of how that between here and the next time we see him, what transpired there. That's enough for me to go, I love it, because it's making me think further. And the premise of like you said, Hordak and Modulok's idea, and even like the way that She-ra had to go about getting back home, I dug it. There's definitely a couple, like the dragon voices drove me crazy. There's certain things here and there, but for the most part, it was way more solid than not.
Nice. I'm converting him, guys. He will like She-ra by the end of this.
I'm not going to say I didn't like She-ra. It's more, for me at least, I felt like the She-ra show had less of things that caught my attention and kept me glued to the story compared to He-Man. And it wasn't necessarily the character's fault. Sometimes it just felt like, here's one thing I'm going to say real quick before we wrap up, and this is kind of my issue with She-ra, is I always felt like if they weren't a main character, the character designs 9 out of 10 times on She-ra were lesser than on He-Man. And I could be wrong on that. People can come at me with pitchforks and torches or whatever. But I always felt like anytime it was a character who wasn't a main character, there was this design about them to make you feel they don't matter. Right. They're not going to come back. They're going to be in a tunic, and that's it. There's this feeling, and this episode proved it. A lot of those guys that come after the dragon, or they come after Tarek, those guys are basically, they look like Bible story characters. And there's a feeling of that all the time in the shows I've seen. Now, I haven't seen all of them, but there is that feeling. Well, you're working it. I get it, but there's definitely this like undervaluedness to the design of the characters for certain things that I feel they did do a little bit better with He-Man on that, to make some of the support the one or two shot characters a little more like you see them and go, well, that's Malaktha right there. Boom, I'm good to go, or whatever.
Well, I think a lot of it is, especially by the time this is going on, especially season 2, a lot of these are reused characters.
Yeah.
So you're going, well, I saw he was this in He-Man, and especially for the background characters, She-ra seemed to get less unique characters. It was just recolors, or like in this case, they didn't even bother recoloring them, which is a shame. I think they should have, but I think that might be a part of it too. Is that where it's like, okay, we've seen this guy before, whereas when we saw him on He-Man, especially you who grew up with it, like you saw him first on He-Man because you saw that series first. They didn't.
Exactly.
We had a whole season and a half of He-Man, and then a little bit of overlap, but not much. So that could be a big part of it.
Could be. I don't know. There's something I can't put my finger on about She-ra with the show, where I feel like there's something that's less compelling about. There's something that isn't as compelling, and I can't figure out what it is. And that's part of the beauty of what we're doing right now. Is I might figure it out along the way and go, "This is it." You know, and I'll be like Ray Stantz, "This is it. This is definitely it." You know, and that'll be my thing finally. And then I can say, "This is what it's been all along."
And there, you know, maybe I'm just glad you enjoyed the episode. You know, I was really curious to see what you thought about it. I mean, we were at the same rating, so I'll take it.
Yeah. Honestly, it's very, very solid, and I appreciate it. And Granamyr, it's like it's hard not to love that guy. Yeah. It's just so hard not to love Granamyr.
Absolutely. So. All right. Well, I think that about wraps us up. We went a little longer in this one. We thank you all for sticking with us. Like I said, it seems like the first time we hit a era or a continuity, it's always like our longest because we got to get some of the basics out of the way. But so this is the time where I'm going to ask you, please, if you enjoyed this, like, share, subscribe, ring that bell down below so you get notified when the new episode premieres. Visit Sean Skavarna's art on Facebook, links down below. Go ahead and join our Legends of Grayskull Facebook page so you're up to date on all the new happenings. We go live from time to time. We discuss stuff, and it's just fun. That link's down below. Sean, anything to add?
No, but you can go on the group and tell me that I suck for not liking She-ra as much as He-Man if you like. That could bring people to the group. You don't know.
I'm gonna go do that as soon as I get done here. So
there you go. See, there you go. Open season. But yeah, other than that, nothing too crazy. So.
All right.
Until next time, I'll let you do the ending this time. Until next time.
Until next time.